we would go back and have another rate study done. So this is setting us up for 3 years and 3 years only, and then we would go back to a rate study in 2025. We would go back and have another rate study done. So this is setting us up for 3 years and 3 years only, and then we would go back to.
Sorry, Judy.
That's okay.
Just
Not used to hearing myself talk. That's weird.
Okay.
That's odd.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so like I said, Robert, Chad, myself, and Ben have spent some time looking at these numbers. And they're not as simple and straightforward as we have done in the past. So we just thought it would be a good idea for us to bring this to committee so you guys can do a head nod of, yep, you know, that sounds good. And then again, this information will go to the auditor. A rate will be developed to pay for the expenditures for the next 3 years. You will have the opportunity to approve that rate study. So just because we're providing this information to the auditors for that rate study doesn't mean that that's an automatic increase. This will come back to this committee and you will take a look at that rate study and you will concur or not concur or make changes or whatever it is that you decide to do at that point. So just so you know, these are estimates. Nothing written in stone tonight, but this is what the four of us came up with as the most reasonable expenditures going into the next 3 years. So go ahead, Bob.
And the last time we did it was in 19 then?
You are correct.
And what was the percentages that we went up then?
Well, we've actually been going up with a fixed rate charge for the last 3 years of $1 a year. And prior to that, I do not know off the top of my head.
I think we went from $7 and some odd cents to $9.34 as a variable.
Yep, that makes sense.
So it doesn't go up by percentage then?
It does not.
Okay.
And there will be all kinds. So tonight, we're not going to decide the revenue side. Tonight, we're going to decide and look at the expenditure side. What will be presented to you when this rate study is done is this is how we think it should be paid for. And it's not like the four of us sit down and say, this is how it's supposed to be paid for. We work with the auditors, we look at other communities and we bring that data back to you. And at that time, there'll be a recommendation on how the revenue stream could come in. And there could be all kinds of changes. It could be variable, it could be fixed, it could be a combination of both of those. It could change the dynamic of what we look at today. So larger, what do I want to call them? Water meters could pay more money than the smaller ones. So residentials are paying less than business or apartments. So there's all kinds of combinations that will come back to you once that rate study is done. So keep in mind, we're not going to talk about or do anything on that side tonight.
All right.
What we want to concur and look at is what are those expenditures going to look like in the next 3 years?
Okay.
So with that, Ben had a letter that he put together, and we're going to start with his thought processes going into the next 3 years. And again, if you want to ask questions as he goes through that, and then Chad and Robert can also chime in if they have any additional information that they would like to share. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Judy. So I'm not sure if everybody got this. There was a little mix up Friday. So I'm going to kind of read through this. Like she said, if you have any questions, please stop me and I'll try to answer as best I can. So when we went through our walkthrough at the treatment facility on May 6th, I showed you the areas that are in desperate need of rebuilding. And because of the new DNR reissuance of the WPDES, we're going to get that information sometime in early July. So we're going to have a 7-year compliance schedule, which outlines how the city will meet the lowered phosphorus limits along with minimization of other nutrients and contaminants. We need to do that by April 2029. The current problems that are affecting the removal of the phosphorus are treatment processes connected with the phosphorus and nutrient removal is outdated. We saw how deteriorated some of the concrete is getting, and the plant is very inefficient. It was built in 1987, where a lot of this stuff that they're imposing on us wasn't even dreamed about. So we need to bring that up to speed. We just incurred a 40% increase in chemical costs that we use to remove our phosphate. Thursday, I'm going to have a jar test to see if alum will be a better alternative. If it's cheaper, we'll try to go for that, but we'll find out once we do that test. We also are still receiving large amounts of clear water infiltration throughout the city from the illegally connected sump pumps, leaking water laterals. So over the next couple of years, when we do street upgrades, hopefully a lot of that will go away. So I talked to Donahue and Associates and McMahon to get their ideas on addressing our problems and provide associated costs, so we kind of know what we need to do to meet the new permit levels. Their submittals are on the page. Well, I guess there's not a number, but there's like an engineering page right there. Yep. So Donahue basically gave us a ballpark. They basically only do wastewater treatment facilities, so they have a really good idea of how much things cost right now. And that is a shocking number. Everything is skyrocketing nowadays. But what we need to do prior to that, and McMahon has more of a proposal where we have to meet certain studies by 2023. They're going to do an operational evaluation report. So I'll give them a lot of information regarding the plant. They're going to submit it to the DNR. By 2024, we're going to have to do a status report on where we are with our engineering and all that other stuff. And then in 2025, we're going to start looking at a facility plan. Once we do the facility plan, we're going to get a really good estimate on what the new treatment facility upgrades are going to cost. And then at that time, we can see, are we going to qualify for clean water funding, which will, have less of a burden on the ratepayers, and other associated costs that could be shaved off of that initial engineering study that you see up on top from Donahue. So does anybody have any questions regarding this? I know these are scary numbers. I did not anticipate it would be this large, but everything in the economy right now is crazy like this. Maybe it will come down, but most of the time, once things go up, they never come back down.
So you know, this is not included in the current rate study. So the actual upgrade at the plant would be taken into consider. He's getting ready for the upgrade. So what's in our actual budget in the next 3 years is consulting fees to get us ready, so we know what that number is going to be for the next rate study.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, the McMahon proposed engineering fees are more along the lines of what it's going to cost in the next 3 years. And as you can see, all that stuff is basically already in our budget. So we shouldn't see much of a bump with that study. So once we get that information, we'll let you guys know every time I get something, I will bring it up to the next board meeting. So if nobody has any questions on the engineering, one of our other big issues that we're having is attracting and retaining facility personnel. Since 2017, since we've gone back to a 3-person crew, we have not been able to maintain 3 employees. Basically, we're becoming a training facility for students from UW Stevens Point and and Fox Valley Tech. When the 3rd person goes away, that creates a hardship for the 2 remaining employees. Not only do we have confined space where you basically need a top guy to keep watch over whoever's working down below, we also have a hard time completing preventive maintenance to keep the facility operating properly. There's just not enough time in a day to do a lot of this stuff. Also, when somebody has vacation time or a parent gets sick and you gotta go take care of them, that leaves 1 person to run the whole facility. So it does lead to potential burnout. So the more employees that we have, the better off we are. So basically, right now, there's a lot of retirements of baby boomers and the older Gen Xers in wastewater industry. This results in many job postings every month at wastewater treatment facilities. Most of these facilities pay significantly more than the city of New London. So that means that we have a hard time retaining employees because we basically trained them to take over these positions. And one of the other problems that we have is there are not too many people that want to go into the wastewater industry. There's about 3 to 6 that I've seen coming out of UW Stevens Point in the next 2 years. And right now there's only one from Fox Valley Technical College that really wants to do wastewater stuff. So the most effective way to attract new hires and to prevent employees from leaving is increasing wages. Just like everybody else, wages are going up to try to get qualified employees. There's a lot of other communities that are struggling to retain their employees and to attract new employees. Right now, Wapaka and Plover are working on wage increases. So during the meetings that Chad, Judy, and Robert and I have had, we felt that Wapaka is going to end up closer to Clintonville's wages. So we're going to use their wages as our baseline for the next couple of sheets that we will go through. So if we want to go to that tab. So this is basically the wages that Clintonville is giving to their employees. So this is just retaining the 3 employees that we currently have. As you can see, I think sorry about that. So basically an advanced operator would be making 28.9. What?
2892.
Oh, this is the old. Yeah, this is the old sheet.
Why don't you bring up the agenda?
Not that one.
Yep, that's it.
That's it.
That's it. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, so for 3 employees, an advanced operator would be making 28.95 an hour. And the superintendent would be making 32.34. So I basically made both the advanced operators at the same level because once everybody meets their minimum requirements, they will be an advanced operator. I also have the benefits for everybody except for myself or the superintendent as a family plan. So that basically would be the wage that everybody would be making if you guys approved it. And then we also have another option, including a 4th employee. So the next sheet will have the 4th employee. And then you can see that these are the rates or the GL account areas that would be affected in the yellow. So salaries, overtime, and all that other stuff. And when we get a 4th employee, that will alleviate the overtime considerably once they're up to speed with how the treatment facility works. Because back in 2011, we had 4 employees. Then we went down to 3. Then we went down to 2 when Saputo shut down. And it's not manageable at all. So we went back to 3 employees, and went back so far that a 4th employee would really help out. Another thing that would help out when we get a 4th employee is, like this time of year when we get a summer storm and it knocks down a whole bunch of trees, the sewer truck is not out cleaning sewers. So while they're busy doing that and we're caught up at the plant, we could go out and take the truck and start cleaning sewers so that we can maintain the sewers so nobody gets backups and stuff. So does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Ben, if you went to the 4 employees, would that Saturday and Sunday overtime always still be there, or would that be?
Yes, because of how large our plant is, the DNR requires that somebody goes there to make sure that the plant is running efficiently. Because if you didn't have the Saturday and Sunday and something went wrong and you were violating that whole weekend, that could make you could kill off some fish and then you'd get a whole bunch of fines from the DNR. So yeah, it would just be we're usually there for 3 hours unless something's broken, then we try to fix it to get it through the weekend. But that will always be there. But a lot of the overtime that I'm experiencing right now is because we have limited staff. I will help with confined space entry and do like normal facility maintenance while there's enough people to help each other. And then afterwards, I stay after 3 and I start doing paperwork that's been building up. So unfortunately.
Just so you know, we won't be deciding tonight either whether they do add a 4th employee or they don't. That will go to rate study. So what we really want to look at tonight is, do we concur that, and now remember, we're not guaranteeing anybody anything as far as wages either. We're putting it at a place where we could potentially employ and keep people at our plant. So we're looking at this as estimates only. Those choices are going to be made as far as where those exact wages are going as part of a whole citywide look at wages. So number one, when you come back to the rate study, the auditors are going to provide you with both adding an employee and not adding an employee, and that decision will be based on rates. So you will make that choice later too. So we will take a look at what rates would look like with a 4th person or with 3 people. So that decision also will be made later.
And I'll just kind of back up. If you want to go to page 8, Ben just briefly kind of talked about the wages. And I just want to kind of point out on the bottom, the wage comparison. So like Ben was talking about, the first line is your current wages, and he's comparing it to Clintonville. So you can kind of see Clintonville, how much of a difference is in their advanced and their superintendent wages compared to what we're paying already. So that's why we're using that number, because if that's a community smaller than us, better look at it. Even, Plover and Shawano, I mean, look at the wages that they're at right now for wastewater treatment plant operators. So that's what Ben kind of breezed over right there. It's a good graph to kind of point that out.
And although what PAC is under, they're looking at rates right now.
Yep.
So even though it looks like they're paying less by the end, but probably by the beginning of next year, that will look very similar or over Clintonville's.
And I talked to Plover and you can see how much they are. So that top line for Plover, that 3141, that's just a breathing body. They don't have to have any certifications at all. That's just to have somebody there to work at the treatment facility. And the other 2, the superintendent, he's making 4401, and another operator that does have the certification is making 3769. So, and they're doing another rate increase because they can't compete with their area either. Wisconsin Rapids and Stevens Point are basically taking everything away from everybody. So it's not just this area, it's all over the place. So yeah, as you can see, we're currently lower than everybody on this sheet, except for the state average, but that's the whole state. That's kind of, I don't know if that's very current either. I think that was 2017 numbers. So, so as Judy was saying, we are looking at either a 3rd or just keeping the 3 employees and 4 employees. So the actual budget that we're gonna propose for 2023, that will be, what page is that? I think it's the
Next
4th, oh,
One more.
no, I think it's on the top. Next one.
Yeah,
Yeah, number
there
3.
you go.
There you go. So basically the main numbers are on the top and those are the wages. Those are basically what I just went over. So for 2023, we're not really anticipating too many other increases. So as you're looking at this spreadsheet, the numbers on the left are for 3 employees and the numbers on the right are for a 4th employee. So the wages are higher to indicate that we are giving us a potential wage increase. The other things that are going up, for the most part, are just our plant equipment or capital equipment. I have 170,000 in there. We're looking at doing the lift station 4 that we weren't able to do this year just because of parts supply issues. There's also a new plow truck because we're trying to replace the trucks every 10 to 12 years and it's due for replacement.
You said plow truck or,
Yeah,
okay, the plow pickup truck.
yeah, it's a pickup truck, but yeah, it's the one that we use to plow.
Yep.
Because we don't want to plow with our new truck because of the utility box. And then electric, water, and sewer is going up considerably as well, because as most of you probably know, they had an issue where they needed to retain employees, so they had to increase their rates. And it sounds like they're also increasing the rates for the water department employees as well. So we have to pay for our electric because we do consume a lot of electricity. And that's something that hopefully if we do the plant upgrade, that will be considerably less in the future. Is there anything other than that? For the most part, there aren't too many big expenditures that we are going to have. Does anybody have any questions on that sheet? All right, so the sewer truck, that thing is 14 years old now. And Luke is currently going out to get quotes to replace it. And then when we get one more quote, I will have numbers to present. But we've been budgeting $40,000 every year for the last 4 or 5 years to basically put and retain earnings so that when it comes time to get the new truck, that money's there. So it's going to alleviate the pressure of coming up with all the money all at once. One thing that Judy is doing is next year, she's going to be putting 50,000 in every year until the next rate study. So we can see, okay, what's the next potential truck purchase going to cost in the next 10 to 14 years. And then we'll adjust accordingly. So when the next truck comes up for replacement, we will have basically the money there to purchase it. And then the next thing is sanitary maintenance for when we were redoing streets. And I'll let Judy.
So as you all have been presented with our street projects that are coming up in the next through 2026, 2027. When we go into those streets, we definitely want to replace any main or laterals that need to be replaced at that time. And we know the price of these things are going up. So my suggestion is that we increase that main and that lateral. So we went up to 300,000 in 2023. And then 80,000 on the laterals in 2023. So $8,000 increase and then a $20,000 increase in the main. And then in 24, we went up $50,000 in both 24 and 25 for main. That is the largest expense when it comes to that infrastructure replacement within our roads. And both Oshkosh Street and the downtown will need probably a lot of those dollars So we're looking at trying to help, or if something else comes up, those dollars are sitting in retained earnings to help us through anything that may pop up in between also. And I think it's a very conservative increase at this time. And again, but in 2025, we'll take another look at those numbers and see if they're making sense or if we need to increase them at that time. So our sewer maintenance side, if you just go down a little bit, Nicole, please, there's the totals, is not going up substantially from year to year. So in the first year, it's about, see, 50,000 and then 50,000 and then about $10,000 in the last year. We did not increase the street department wages in the beginning of this budget. As you can see, it's still 28,650 through the entire 3 years because we actually have not used them. I looked at the history and that should be sufficient going into the next 3 years. So this is a very small increase on the actual sanitary maintenance side of the budget. Any questions on any of this? Any comments? Oh, yeah. If you want to go back to the,
Or the next tab.
there you go.
So if you can scroll down to the bottom, this will be the totals that we're requesting for 2023, 2024, 2025. Both with
There you go.
3 employees and one with 4 employees. So the major increase is because of wages. And in 2023, we are doing quite a few capital equipment purchases. But after that, it basically only increases 24,000 from 2023 to 2024 and 12,000 from 2024 to 2025.
So the initial increase with three employees at the plan is 168,000. And with 4, it's 275,000. And just like Ben said, after that initial increase in year 1 of 23, it's minimal increases in 24 and 25. And I can tell you when those rate studies come in, that's going to be a smoothing 3 years. You're not going to see, just this huge rate, and none of us are going to want to work here if that's what we do our citizens, but it would definitely be a smoothing increase over those 3 years. The other thing you look at, or I think about as I look at these 3 years, is of course you want to think about the next rate study and what are you setting yourself up for or not up for. But what this does too is Ben talked about, if he does get 4 employees over there, he might substantially, remember, it could take 3 years, even if he had the people today to get them up to a standard where they could start reducing some overtime. So what you're trying to set yourself up for success, obviously. So you're looking at 4 employees and then you can reduce some overtime. And then maybe the reduction in that can help pay for some of the plant upgrades. So you kind of try to think about those kind of things, even as if you're, you don't want to be tunnel visioned when you're trying to think about these.
You had the comparison of all the other towns for wages. Where are we with rates?
Did we supply those?
Yes, so if you go to the salaries, community rate tab, it'll be the furthest one to the right. Yep, so up on top is where the rates are for the municipalities that are basically the same size or have the same type of treatment facility. One thing that a lot of them have differently, and Judy brought it up, is the bigger the meter, the more you charge. And that helps offset the costs for ratepayers, like people who are on fixed incomes. That kind of keeps their rates fairly low, but yet still provides revenue to pay for these proposed rates. So like Clintonville, you can see where theirs are kind of low, but you look at their variable rate per 1,000 gallons, and it's substantially higher than everybody. So it all depends on how you guys want to fund everything. And that's what we're gonna go over once the auditor is done with everything, and then we can see where we stand and where we should go from there.
I did a little math at home, flat work actually, but we're all really close except for they are. There's a reason why they're paying the money they're paying. Their rate is like $75 per 4,000 gallons, I think I did. Ours is like 44. So they're substantially higher.
And one thing,
But I
with-
was gonna, oh, sorry.
oh, no, go ahead.
I was gonna ask about that different meter size. To me, that makes sense too.
Yeah, because those are the bigger industries and like your apartment complexes and stuff that usually have those bigger meters. But one thing I want to say about Clintonville and a lot of these that have a little bit higher wages or rates, they just completed a facility upgrade. So that's necessitated by trying to meet these new DNR permit levels. Unfortunately, you can't tell the DNR, I don't want to do this, and we're not going to do this. You're going to do it, whether you want to or not. So we're trying to find the best way to do it without affecting our ratepayers harshly. But unfortunately, this is the world we live in right now.
With all that development to come into town with the SC Sersky and Red Sloth and all that, is there any anticipation of more revenue coming in?
Especially if we go with the meter size. Because I think most of those have a 2 or 4 inch meter at least.
So that might offset some of the,
So we can take a look at that. If we know that there's going to be some ratepayers adding to the revenue side, we can provide that information to the auditors when they do the estimates. And they were, they'd be happy to add those in, knowing that that's going to happen, but probably not the first year is my guess, but as you go through time, yes.
So the kind of like the fixed rate and the variable rate. So if people wanna do something for themselves, they maybe are taking water and sewer for granted. They wanna cut down on their bill, maybe consume less, like people are driving less now and so that's on them. But so do you consider that, like, if everybody started being a little smarter about their consumption, that would obviously hurt you.
But that's where the fixed will kind of offset that.
Okay.
Because that fixes a monthly fee no matter what. I mean, as long as you have a meter in your house, that's what you're gonna be paying for that.
But you don't want to like penalize people for being smarter about consumption either. So
Right.
there's like a happy medium in there.
And the less they consume, the less of a amount that we have to spend to make the treatment plant big enough to handle what they're doing, plus all the clear water. So there's a trade-off there as well.
The fix is what they look at for buying.
Because it's a known revenue stream where variable is not. I mean, part of variable, you can say, yeah, but there become, half of it or something like that, but yes. And the auditor will talk about a lot of that stuff too, so.
And like those that were on the board when Saputo was still here, and then when they left, that was a huge hit to us. We lost basically a quarter of our revenue because we didn't have a fixed rate. It was all variable. And when some plant leaves that is giving you 250,000 gallons a day, that hurts. So does anybody have any questions regarding what we're proposing?
Are you talking about fixed rate for a meter size?
The amount we charge, that will, right now, we're not. Basically, what we're doing is saying, do you agree to the first 2 pages? So like what the sewage plant is gonna cost to run in the next 3 years, what the street department revenue or the sanitary revenues are gonna be needed to maintain that. And let us go forward, do the rate study. And then once we get the numbers from the auditor, then we'll know how are we going to pay for this? And then, like Judy said before, it could be more fixed rate, it could be more variable. It all depends on, or a combination of the two. But we don't really know that until they crunch the numbers. So
Like
maybe
Judy
it's-
said, you're only focused on the expenditure side right now. And that gives you the study to give you what the rates potentially could be.
And the reason we went with the Clintonville numbers to establish a reasonable line, because we didn't want to start low, run this rate study, and in the middle of this, find out that we're losing employees, we can't retain employees, we can't hire new employees with the numbers we proposed. And we're stuck with what we had for that rate.
There's no way around it. I mean, we need sewage treatment workers. I mean, we gotta pay them, we gotta pay them. I mean,
So at this point, I think we're looking for a blessing from the Board of Public Works to use these numbers as Ben's presented, to send that to the consultants so that they can start crunching the numbers, so they can give us back the report, so that we can evaluate what the rates would be.
No, I want to be absolutely clear on this one, okay? Sometimes we get with the auditor and things will change in these numbers. I don't anticipate any huge change from these estimates. So we will call them estimates at this point. I don't want to say that it's going to be exactly this number, but you're going to give us, you know, the room to breathe so that when the auditor comes back and says, you know, 10 or 20% this way or that, we're able to make those changes to get a good rate study. Because he will think of things, he goes into many communities and he'll take a look at this, and I can guarantee you he's going to make suggestions or make some changes, because nobody's perfect and we sometimes overlook, even if 4 of us will overlook something. So I don't want you know, so you can't hold us steady to the exact number. But I think your biggest change is what you're looking at tonight, and that's in wages. So you're not going to see that kind of increase in anything else, but just give us a little breathing room. If something's going to change substantially, we would come back to you. I don't see that. But definitely, I can tell you when we go through the rate study, nothing's going to be exactly the same as it looks tonight, but it's not going to be a substantial change either. So.
So, Ms. Barrington, are you looking for a motion on this?
yes.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
To give them the ability to go out and work on a rate study.
Rate study.
Rate study.
Yep. To provide the estimates to the auditor.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, well, thank you. And one last thing is we had a meeting with Corcoran and Donahue and Associates and everybody associated with the digester upgrade. They looked at the peeling coatings. Today they ripped off as many as they could that were basically in potato chip form, I'll call it. So we're gonna put that back online until Sherwin-Williams can run their tests on why it failed. And then we're gonna inspect the other one, because if they would wait too long, we wouldn't be able to get the inspection in before the warranty expires. And we don't wanna have both of these having problems. So we're gonna look at that, put the other one online, and when Sherwin-Williams gives the fix, then we will take that digester down and have them fix it the way Sherwin-Williams recommends it. But again, this is all warranty work. The city is not paying any of this. Thank you.
Nothing else, I guess we could Richard. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Is that